It's finally happening. We're in fall of 2024 and the real estate market looks significantly different than it did at the beginning of the year. So in this video, I'm going to talk about interest rates, price drops, home values, the Fed's recent rate cuts, and more importantly, how the recent NAR lawsuit had a completely opposite effect of what was intended and how it may have sent us into a buyer's market. So let's just dive right into it. Hey everyone, my name is Eddie and I'm a realtor here in Maryland. And if this is your first time visiting the channel, thank you for being here. I've made it my mission to help people just like you determine the best places to move in Maryland. I give you the market updates and everything you need to know before moving here. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. And whether you're considering moving to Maryland or you already live here and you just want to know what's going to happen to your home values, you're in the right place. Now, you've likely heard that interest rates are back in the low sixes, and they've been that way since the beginning of August, down about 1% since the April high of 7.5%. And that's a big change. On a house that's $500,000, that's going to save you about $300 a month in interest. So with this significant drop in rates, you'd expect that buyers are flooding the market, but that's just not the case here in Maryland. Whether it's a hangover from the high interest rates being high for so long, or the election year and that coming up very soon, people are kind of frozen in place, and we haven't seen a huge uptick in buyer activity with this 1% rate drop. And the easiest way to measure this is to look at pending sales. And we're pretty much exactly trending like we were last year with pending sales. We're only up 30 homes pending over last year. 11,006 versus 1136. And that's when interest rates were at 7.2%. And now around 6.2%, we're seeing pretty much the exact same numbers. And I recently was speaking with a lender who's been in this industry for over 30 years, and they've said that this is the weirdest market that they've ever seen. But this is not the only weird thing that we're seeing in the market right now. Price drops, on the other hand, are up about 1%, just under 1% year over year, which would make you think that home values are also decreasing. But that's not the case either. If we go to the median closed sales price right now, we are up 5% year over year. And throughout the entire year, we have been trending between 3 and 8% above last year's numbers year over year. And where the news is going to confuse the public is making you think that there is a housing market crash happening because they're going to focus on the numbers since June until September. But if you really want to know what's happening in the market, you have to bring in historical data to realize that real estate markets are seasonal. It's not like the stock market, which is cyclical. These are seasonal, meaning certain times of year almost always act the same way. And if you look, we, in the beginning of the year around Valentine's Day, end of January, end of February, see an increase in home values, median sales price, until about the 4th of July. That's usually where we see the drop off and values start to go back down. People are on summer vacation, and then they kind of level off for the rest of the year. But if you look at the median sales price year over year, you're going to see that we're significantly above prior years. So do not focus on the downturns. Focus on the year over year changes, and you'll have a much better picture of what's going on in the market. And it's going to be very interesting to see where home values go from here. With the Fed's recent basis point cut of 50 basis points, that's trending in the right direction. Mortgage rates should, in theory, continue to go down. But that recent 1% drop that we saw in mortgage interest rates happened before the Fed cut their rates because the mortgage industry analysts were already predicting it was going to happen. So what you're seeing now is already baked in, as they say. So don't expect now that they've dropped the rates for the mortgage interest rates to hit the 3 and 4% range. It's very unrealistic that that's going to happen. And if it did, we would see home prices skyrocket. So you kind of don't want to see that happen if you're a buyer in the market. But it is much more realistic for conventional rates to go back into the high or mid fives by the end of the year and into early next year. But surprisingly, the Fed lowering the interest rates is not the biggest thing affecting the real estate industry right now. The biggest thing affecting real estate right now is the recent NAR lawsuit that settled on August 17th. And the biggest change from this lawsuit is that compensation is no longer listed in the MLS, meaning that a buyer's agent no longer knows if they're going to be paid by a seller when they bring a buyer to close on that property. So these are some major changes that are completely transforming the way real estate is done. And here in Maryland, the two major changes that we're adapting to is that as a buyer's agent, we have to call the seller's agent to see if any compensation is offered to ensure that our buyer does not have to come out of pocket to pay us. And the second major change is that before the first time you ever tour a home, you have to have a buyer's agreement in place with your agent, meaning you can't virtually tour or do a in-person tour with an agent at all until you have an agreement signed stating exactly how that agent is going to be paid and exactly how you are going to be represented. But this lawsuit has not gone the way that the plaintiffs expected. In fact, it's doing the complete opposite, and here's why. Some sellers are being advised to not offer compensation at all to a buyer's agent, which sounds right. Well, they get more money in their pocket. They don't want to have to pay for someone else to represent the buyer. Why would they do that? But what it's doing is causing less buyers to come and see their home. And in turn, because they have less buyers seeing their home, it's taking longer for their homes to sell. They're sitting on the market, and sellers are starting to get desperate. And then they finally start to offer compensation. And then they're more open to more favorable terms to the buyer. So this is completely different than what was expected. And actually what's happening is that buyer's agents are being paid more money now than before. And the reason they're being paid more money now than before is for those houses that are sitting on the market, the agent knows they can ask for more compensation. The agent knows that their buyer can buy the house for less and maybe get inspections and all the terms that they want. So it is really a disadvantage to a seller in most cases to not offer compensation. And so many agents out there right now are advising to either not offer it or to never disclose how much they're offering. And what I'm seeing is that it's hurting the sellers. And then the ripple effect of this is that there's more inventory on the market. The current supply is 1% higher than it was last year. And it shouldn't be that way if interest rates are lower. So the NAR settlement has had a direct impact on inventory, on months of supply, which is a great thing for you as a buyer because we're now at over 11 months of supply here in Maryland. So that means we are really pushing towards a more balanced market. And eventually, I think we're going to hit a buyer's market here in Maryland. So what can you learn from this? Well, as a seller, it pays to pay. Yes, in some cases, maybe it makes sense to not offer compensation, maybe an investment property. There are a few cases where that might be. But overall, putting your house on the open market, it is almost always better to offer compensation to the buyer's agent for a ton of reasons. You're going to net more money in the end offering it than not offering it. And it's just a better strategy right now in Maryland. And look, some of you watching are very well researched. You know the market, and maybe you're going to go FSBO. And that may be right for you. There's about 5% of homeowners out there that can successfully sell their home on their own. And if that's you, absolutely go and do it. Figure out a way to save as much money as possible. But for the rest of you, you have to have a strategy in place to get the top dollar for your home, to get the highest net proceeds. And right now, the best way is to hire an agent who knows what they're doing, who knows how to negotiate, and to offer a buyer agent compensation. And what this means for you as a buyer right now is you have an opportunity to take advantage of poor advice and poor strategies being implemented by sellers. I have a ton of my buyers right now asking me, why is this house sitting on the market? It looks great. It looks perfect. What's wrong with it? And that's exactly the problem. The sellers either priced too high or weren't offering compensation. And because of it, their house is sitting. And my buyers are thinking, well, what's wrong with it? Do you think that as a seller, you're going to get top dollar in that circumstance? Absolutely not. So my buyers are benefiting by getting homes, paying less money for them, getting it on their terms, all because the seller had a poor strategy going into it. Now, I think this is going to balance out. I think sellers are going to realize that this is not the best route to go. I mean, back in 2015, sellers were offering, on top of compensation, an additional 3% seller credit to buyers just to entice them to get to their homes. We may get to that point again because of this, but I think it'll balance out. I think there's a window of opportunity here for buyers. So if you're in the market, it's the right time for you. Go ahead and take advantage of that. And if that's you, if you're considering buying in Maryland right now, I would love to represent you. Whether that's 2 weeks away or 2 years away, reach out to me and we'll get a plan together for you and your move. The best way to connect with me is to go in the description below or go in the comments and click on the link to schedule a one-on-one call with me. We'll talk about the next steps, the best plan for your move so it goes as smoothly as possible. And as always, if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe so you stay up to date on all of my videos about moving to Maryland.